We have to say I own the rights to this music in a minute, right? Well, welcome to the Jim Anderson Show. I was just joking and saying I don't own the rights to the music. You know, you got to do that on Facebook and all that, or they cut you off. We're here while waiting on Jim Anderson to come into the studio, and Austin is on his way as well. So I made it here early today, and then we got a fill-in right now that has a mic close to her. She's shaking her head no, but she'll jump in a heartbeat. Well, we do have a special guest here as well. James McLeod is in the studio again. To talk to you about what's going on in his life and what he's trying to do. As we wait for Mr. Anderson and others to come in, I want to welcome the judge into the show right off the top. Put that mic close to you, Judge, and say who you are.
I'm Jim McLeod. It's a pleasure to be here on this nice, crisp Monday morning.
Oh, crisp Monday morning. Ooh, that's definitely a one right there. Jim is on the phone already. Well, we got Jim on the phone already, Todd, so we're going to go with that. Since you don't want to pull the mic closer, you want to tell who you are real quick?
Nah.
You sure today? Because you're going to have to jump in sooner or later. You know you're going to have to jump in. Because Austin ain't here. We ain't here. No, how you doing, sister? How you doing?
I'm doing
today?
Great. Thank you for
asking. You got to pull that mic closer.
He's going to say, I know. I never do this.
Yes,
Thank you. Welcome.
And tell who you are real quick for people to know, because they be asking me on the show.
Who am I?
Who are you? Yes.
I am Latasha Martin.
Latasha Martin. And your son is Austin, right?
Yep, my son is Austin Martin.
And man, people are really want to meet this young man.
They should hit him up on his website, austinvaughnmartin.com. They can book him to speak. If people need a speech writer, he's an excellent speech writer. And he is an excellent facilitator or MC if you have an event.
How old is he?
Austin is 20 years old.
So you've been working since day one with him, basically, right?
Well, all my kids I've been working with them. Don't call them out because my kids will call me out.
I can't just call him. I got to call all your kids. How many kids you got?
I have 3 children. Why is this becoming an interview about Latasha Martin? We got a whole guest here.
Yeah, I know that, but we got to break the bread. We just can't just go into the Jim Anderson show.
What do you want to know?
Austin is I'm saying this because so many people are asking how they get in contact with him. When he gets here, he's going to let us know as well. But he's an inspirational speaker to a lot of folks that's come on the show, the Jim Anderson show, and that's because a mom and a dad has took time out in the community, has done it. That's why I'm trying to give you your props.
So yes.
Well,
thank you. So I will say the difference in Austin and my other 2 children is, so Austin is a graduate of Canisius High School. He graduated as an Ignatius Scholar with a 4.0. He had a full ride to RIT in their honors program and master's, like a dual master's and bachelor's program. He wanted to go to Howard, and he decided to take a gap year. Now, I know a lot of people as parents who go on the traditional pathway will always say, well, why didn't you push him into going to college? And it's funny because my brother, who is a doctor in education, he's a principal down in Boston, said, I'm glad you didn't have him go to college.
Right.
I think he would have been frustrated because the way that he thinks is just on such a impulse. It's an intellect. He's a very smart kid who doesn't say a lot of things, but he knows a lot of things around the art of communication. And so I encourage him to do that. And so for the last couple of years, he's been walking through that process. And one of the things he talks about in his speaking is that if you put me next to a college grad, what's the differentiator? And like the job he has right now required a degree. Well, they preferred a degree and he doesn't have one.
Northland Corridor.
Northland. He's one of their outreach people. And so it was really intentional on the type of work that he selected because that job gets that flexibility. No. And so then the funny part is he still works with me. So we giggled because last year we actually were doing a presentation in front of some administrators in C-STEP, which is college step. So that's kind of like a funny story. So I never have him share his credentials until the end. Not that we don't believe college is important. I think education, formal education in certain industries is very important. But if you're just getting into a debt trap, it doesn't make sense to me. So like if you're going to be a judge or a lawyer or an engineer or doctor, I think it's very, very important. But if you just send your kid to school and they don't have a plan and they don't know how to articulate their value, not only they can graduate, but they can't articulate their value. So now we're back at step one where you got a kid with all this education. And what do? They decide, I want to go get more education. And now they have all this debt, but they don't have the types of jobs that could even afford them to have a good quality of life. So the flip side with him is that he's just navigating through his professional career in a non-traditional way for the US, because in Europe, they encourage, or other parts of the world, they encourage a gap year before they have their kids a gap year. Some of them have formal programs for that.
So and, like red shirting in the way, kind of.
I don't know what red shirting means.
Yeah, well,
when he hears us talking about him,
academics, you can
have a seat over here next to me.
Locked into a basketball program or whatever, you can red shirt and it does not affect your eligibility. Am I right or wrong? Eligibility. I don't. Red shirt on it. We just talking about.
I don't know, but I do say. But like I said, so he is my communication coach, and I always tell him he dismisses that a lot. He puts it on a very low thing, but I say it saved my marriage. It has helped me as a business owner to communicate differently because I'm a direct communicator. And
welcome to the Jim Anderson
so that's
show.
What it
Austin
is.
Just came in the building. But you know what? Before we go there, you better say something about the other kids before they like, what?
Oh, so my other two children. So that's part of the reason why I didn't mind the gap year. So I have two older daughters, one who's 25, who's in leadership at 800 room hotel up in Pittsburgh. But she started her school thing and going into pharmacy.
You are blessed.
Well, she didn't want to finish pharmacy.
Wow.
So now she's working in hospitality, but I didn't even know. I did as a parent the best thing I could to direct her that way, but okay. And then my second daughter, she went to school for graphic design and she decided she didn't like graphic design. So I said, okay, we are 2 for 2 on not really liking what they did. And even for myself, and then I'm going to shift it back to the program. I went to school for engineering. The only reason I went to school for engineering, my son has heard this so many times, because I grew up in West Seneca. My guidance counselor said, I don't know how you got into RIT and you won't graduate.
Oh, he just already marked you off.
So I said, I will. But I hated engineering. But so after engineering school, I went to hair school. Then I went back to graduate school. But I told my mom I use all my degrees every day because I solve problems for a living.
See, now, you know what? That's the Jim Anderson show. She said, how did this shift from Judge McLeod to your mom? Because on the Jim Anderson show, we flow like that.
Okay,
and Austin wasn't here. And guess what? Austin just came in the house. I want to have you introduce our guest today. I already know him. And we're going to roll it out because Jim Anderson probably is on the phone still, right? He's on the phone listening in, and we're going to turn him up a little bit. Hey, Jim, we just rolling it out. Austin is in your hands.
Good morning, Buffalo. Sorry for my delay. It's President's Day.
President's Day.
I was a little later than I should have, so I apologize. But I do know we have an exciting show today. I think an important show, and I think as we continue to talk about as Buffalo progresses, is going to require not one person. I've always talked about it. It's never going to be one person that's going to come down and save our city. It's going to be the voices, the education, the experiences, the perspectives of many different people, and hopefully under a good leader. So I think we had Miss Judge McLeod will be coming on the show today.
But
talking.
He's changed. He's not on. He's.
Yeah, you ain't hear the news, so you've been at home sleeping. You ain't know. Well, you gonna let them bust it out on you.
I'm eyes wide. I'm gonna be getting news like the community. I'm eyes wide. I don't know what's going on.
Bring him on, and then we gonna hear what he got to say. Then, right?
Well, it's a pleasure to have you today, and I guess I'm gonna be hearing some important news in about 30 seconds.
You did look stunned, but that was rather profound. You got a great radio voice too.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
Yes, that's him. So, Judge, without further ado, you're on the show, on the Jim Anderson show. We want to start off right from, because Austin's like, wow, what happened? He don't know what happened. So, can you explain to him what you just did?
What happened? No.
Yes.
It's Judge McLeod too.
Judge
so when we think
McLeod,
about the
yes. Go ahead, Judge. You have the mic.
As over the weekend, after careful thought and consideration and looking at the landscape and looking at the processes that have taken place over the last few months in this race for mayor, looking at the number of candidates that are out there, looking at the real viability of winning with a lot of us in the race, which reduces it considerably. I decided to suspend my efforts for the position, not because I really wanted to, because I believed that I was the best candidate, best qualified person for the race, but I don't want to be a spoiler. My purpose in getting involved in this was to try to make Buffalo a better place for everybody who lives here, to bring honesty, integrity, and transparency to City Hall and to the city of Buffalo, to make Buffalo one. What I mean by that is to not have one part of the city that is doing extremely well and another part of the city with the same representatives, with the same tax dollars, doing extremely poorly. That needed to change. I jumped into this not because I needed to. This is a position that I was not seeking for the sake of looking for a great pension. It wasn't a position I was looking for, seeking to use it as a stepping stone for some great job somewhere else. Wasn't seeking this job to open the doors for family and friends to come in and get whatever they wanted on the backs of other folks.
Right.
It was an effort that was to truly try listening to the people and seeing the needs that were there to make Buffalo better. And I just firmly believe that the way that it's been going, the process that's been utilized to get whoever the nominated, endorsed candidate was going to be, it just wasn't right, wasn't fair. And so not wanting to continue to be a part of that, stepping back and hoping that the right person does win.
Wow.
I must say I have a question as a young person, because I can hear the passion that you have for the city and just the thought and intention that you had towards what you wanted to do. This is not shooting at any other candidate or poking fingers, but I think for me and my mom, we've always talked about there's certain candidates that you leave the station with, you're like, okay, they're cool. The other ones you leave and you're like, okay, that's a real plan. That's someone who's really adamant on improving the city. And though I know it's probably a difficult decision, I couldn't see Judge McLeod, you saying, okay, well, because I can't do this role, I'm going to stop advocating or fighting for a better version of Buffalo. And so my question to you would be, I think this provides a really good model for young people. I think a lot of young people and people in Buffalo in general want a better city, see a better city, but don't have the courage because of where we are. It feels like sometimes when you try something and it doesn't work, people are so quick to point fingers and this is why and talk behind your back. What does it look like to strategically pivot? And how do you do that without feeling like you lost?
Well, to me, it's not a pivot because since I've been in Buffalo, I've attempted to be engaged as much as possible. Even when I got on the bench, sometimes you get folks who, a lot of times, I should say, you get people who are elected to positions and they profess before they get there to want to do a lot of things, or profess that they have done a lot of things when they really haven't. When I say a lot of things, volunteer things that you didn't have to do, but you felt that you were compelled to do, giving back. One of my good friends, Judge Jeanette Ogden, she's when you see Jeanette, that somewhere during the course of her conversation, she's going to say that we have an obligation to lift as we climb. That's something that I've believed in as well. A lot of folks have climbed and not bothered to look behind them, let alone pull anybody up. So I've given thousands of hours, volunteer hours, over the years in all parts of the city, North Buffalo, South Buffalo, believe it or not, the east side, the west side, trying to bring people together, working with different community-based organizations, working with young people, working with the school system, trying to keep kids in school, because keeping them in school increases the chances of graduation. And once you graduate, there's a greater chance of a better life. Those are the sorts of things that I have been doing in the past, and I'll just continue to do. Saying that I'm giving up this race or withdrawing from this race. I don't want to say I'm giving it up.
Mhm.
I'm just withdrawing, pivoting, as you said,
That word.
to something gives me more time to do the sort of work that I've been doing in the past. That, believe it or not, through all of this, I've continued to do with different organizations. So I'm just going to keep doing it. And at the same time, I think, hopefully, just listening to what you just said, hopefully more people are going to look at things differently. There's a lot of naysayers here in Buffalo. Even friends of mine, you hear the word can't too often. You can't do this, you can't do that. I told somebody, what if you can't do was something that Harriet Tubman said, okay, I can't. I said, we'd still be someplace picking cotton and beans if with that attitude. I told Dr. King, we can't. I told Booker T. Washington, my great aunt Mary McLeod Bethune, you can't. That should not be a word in our vocabulary. And or they say, well, they won't let you. Well, you should not have they telling you what you can and can't do. You have to speak and work for yourself. And so hopefully people saying, well, by taking this step, the greater good for the many hopefully will come about, as opposed to any benefit that the few might have realized will happen. So hopefully people will reevaluate and people will say,
come together and get
again.
The right one.
And we will get together and move forward. You see it happen in other cities,
but not Buffalo.
You see it. I mean, you can
drive an hour away.
Yes,
I'm sorry. We do have a caller. I want to let them join in the conversation, then I'll let you pick up right there because I was going to keep listening.
Jim Anderson is on the show. Jim, you're on the air. Go ahead, Jim.
Hey, I'm listening. I'm gonna join on them callers. I couldn't get through.
You got through.
But anyway, let me just say this. I really was calling. The reason I was calling, I should have said I wanted to jump at the beginning, is I just wanted to apologize. I couldn't get there. I'm with my contractors upstairs working on a pipe.
Oh.
And I'm not. I'm not coming, but I wanted to apologize to the judge and to the crew. And I'm going to hang up and listen on the radio, but I'll leave you with this, Judge. There may, in the parties may come out with a candidate that they like, and somehow, hopefully, the community might come out with a candidate they like that might not be the candidate that the party likes. So I wonder what you think about that. And where would you consider throwing your support?
Yeah, everybody's asking that question.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
I have a good rest of the show. I'll be listening.
Okay.
And so are my contractors. Thank you.
Yes. Go ahead, Judge.
Thank you. With half of that question, it's sort of a flashback, and I know I remember, Jim, to 76, 77 when Art Eve jumped out.
Yes.
That was a race I got involved. I was not too long out of law school, and I got involved in that race. And I remember Art's campaign headquarters on Jefferson Avenue, across the street from Jim Bell's Cleaners.
Yeah.
And he was an individual that the party didn't support. Matter of fact, I think Les Fascio, who
you named some names,
was
man.
A friend of mine
back in the day,
who was the endorsed candidate, and the community said no, and he won. So that's doable. That's doable. One of the reasons why I stepped back was because, in my opinion, there were too many of us in this race, and too many of us in this race, and with too many of us in this race, it allows the power.
Well, Mellon.
Yes.
Is it that? Judge? I mean,
well, there are too many people of color.
Too many people of color.
And so what it does, it allows, in that instance, the decision makers to say, well, gee, if you folks can't figure out who you want, we don't want to get involved. Mm-hmm. That's the usual cop out, and or it dilutes our votes in the room, and as a result, no one would come out ahead. So one of the things I had advocated for months ago was that Buffalo, the leaders within the African American community, just like we did, or our elders did, back when Art Eve was around and Reverend Bennett Smith was around. Oh yeah, you're talking about Dana Push Buffalo, and Herb Bellamy was around, and the Black Leadership Forum was around. they would call people in the room
Right.
and say, okay, we're going to evaluate, we're going to consider, we're going to look at your credentials, we're going to do this, we're going to do that, and we're going to suggest to you folks who we believe the best candidate is, and you guys run with that.
That's what happened back in the day with Jim Bell, all the politicians that came into common council years ago. It was all guys that were handpicked. Moody Pugh and all of them. You guys got in those rooms, and I was a young man watching this here, and then you had more advice coming from other people, other cities. Jesse Jackson and all of them would come here and say, "This is how you guys have to do it." Push came out of that, and you had some power on Jefferson Avenue to the point that right now, what we're seeing now is people being appointed to these positions, and without the say of the community. And I think that's why you're on the show, and I believe you talked to our youth on the TV show, and they asked you some questions about it, and then you were on our show yesterday, and it was like they really respect you for really taking that angle, saying, "Listen, I don't want to be the one to be called the one that mess up the vote in our community or get the right representation." So now that you're there, and Mr. Anderson asked you, and you didn't want to say who your endorsement was because the kids asked as well, who is your endorsement? He was like, I'm gonna wait off on it, and I believe in that. But we still have a bunch of folks in this race, and how we gonna get this message across? Yours is the first one that came out was genuine to say, I don't want to be the one to have it at my legacy.
Yeah, that's something I did not want. But as to who I would support, that's a good question.
Mm-hmm.
That's a good question. I don't know. I honestly don't know.
Because it should be in a room again.
It should be in a room again. And you look at credentials. I mean, as I was telling the kid yesterday, I don't want to blow my head up, but I have 3 degrees, an associate's degree, bachelor's degree, Juris Doctorate degree. I've been on the bench as a judge for more than 2 decades. I've had to make hard decisions for more than 20,000, probably closer to 30,000 cases, which means about 60,000 lives here in the city of Buffalo or in Western New York that I've impacted by decisions that I've made. I've given volunteer hours to all sorts of organizations, whether it was working with Back to Basics or working with the Mad Dads, working with Arlie Daniels that you talked about before, working with the schools. I sat on, continue to sit on a foundational board, was on the board of Kaleida Health.
You're on the board with Root Ministries right now.
Ministries, a couple of charter schools I've been involved in. I was a trustee at Medaille College. All of that in between my day job. Used to go to one of the grade schools, myself and a number of friends of mine, before we would start. I was over a lunch hour. We would go and read and help tutor young kids who were identified as needing additional help. So, I mean, those are the sorts of things that I've done, which I think qualified me for the position. In addition to that, of everybody whose name is out there. So I'm the only one that ever ran a citywide race and won. I'm the only one out of everybody who's out there who ran a countywide primary and won. So I think I brought an awful lot to the table. However, it appears as though others may have thought otherwise and/or other reasons that exist out there. And once again, I didn't want to be a part of saying what I've done has caused us to continue to lose out, because people of color have lost so much here in the city of Buffalo compared to other residents. And we're so far behind in Buffalo as opposed to other cities here in not only in New York State, but in the country. And it shouldn't be that way. And it doesn't have to be that way. I'm not beholden to anyone. No one can say that because I gave you tens of thousands of dollars for your campaign, I expect you to help me with this contract or something like that.
Yeah.
That kind of baggage I didn't bring along with me.
I just think it's very interesting in it. And even to his question of who do you want to endorse, I think I don't know is a very fair answer because it is so many candidates to choose from. I was talking to someone in the store yesterday. It was an older gentleman. He was talking about his history and kind of nostalgia. And he said, I'm sorry for boring you. And I said, no, I think it's very important that young people hear the history, because oftentimes the disconnect is that we're fighting for a Buffalo that we've never seen, right?
Yes.
A better Buffalo that we've never experienced. And I think when I hear some of the history that you talk about on the political side, it sounds like a lot of these 15 candidates, like a lot of this candidate work should have been done before the election. It almost sounds like we should have had leaders ready. We should have had people that we already knew, community members, that if this position opens up, this is someone we like to see in office, because it sounds like for our people, which typically is a trend, we're scrambling. That's why so many people, and I think it's many reasons why we're here, but I think one of the biggest reasons that I've always talked about, we've talked about for many months on this show, is I don't think you could ask the average Black person what unites us. I don't think they would have an answer for that. I don't think we even know what we want in a leader. And so we fall for slogans and hot dogs and handshakes and smiles, because we don't know what we want. I don't know if even me as a young person has an answer as to what a Black leader for Buffalo would look like. I know we had an image for many, many years, but I don't think that's the image we want. You know, I don't think Myron Brown was a bad mayor, but I don't know if that's what we're looking for another.
So shove it down our throat.
20. So I don't know if we even have an answer for that. Right. And maybe you can give some perspective, even though you've withdrawn. What do you think would be some of those key important things for a leader to have for us to have a successful Buffalo the next couple of years? I know you had the qualifications. I know you're probably still trying to make it as humble as possible. I know you had the qualifications, but on that trait side, right, on that personality trait wide, what are like one or two things that you know confidently, having been in that space, that a leader for us to have a better Buffalo would need? One or two traits that you think they're going to have?
Well, you have to be, number one, I think, independent. You can't be beholden to anyone. Mm-hmm. Too many, in my opinion, an awful lot of folks are beholden to others, and so they may say one thing, but in many instances they have to look over their shoulders to the person who they're beholden to see if that was the right answer. Mm-hmm. And that's a bad thing. You have to have someone who has backbone, who's willing to make the right decision as opposed to just the political decision. Too many times, I think, in Buffalo, political decisions have been made, but they haven't been the right decisions. And we can just walk out this building and look up and down the streets and see that in the form of empty lots that, again, before you probably knew, that were full of homes and businesses and people that were here. One of the things Buffalo doesn't do well, I think, is it has not planned for succession. Other groups do that. Yeah. Other groups do that. Mm-hmm. In the Irish community, in the Italian community, in the Hispanic community, but we don't plan well for succession. And so when someone leaves or passes away, we're starting from scratch again, or others put in place who they want to represent us, and we accept it. I remember when I first came to Buffalo from Utica, if I did say that before. I came here for a church youth conference, and Utica's a real small city. But when I came to Buffalo, I was mesmerized by what I saw. I mean, I'm seeing Black folk. I guess it would be like going to Atlanta and saying, "My gosh, look at what Black folk are doing out here. How come we're not doing it back home?" If it were doable, they should take young, and that's who we have to depend on, young men and women, and take them to another city to see what Black folk can do, what Black folk have done in some instances with what we had and or less, and how they have built that up into greatness, and how they ensure that when they leave or when they transition into something different, retirement or whatever, that there's someone coming along to replace them, someone who has the skill set, someone who has the intellect, and someone who has the ability to look forward as opposed to just looking back.
So, Judge, we're going to go to the commercial break, and we'll be right back with James McLeod on the Jim Anderson Show. Thank you.
We're still live. If you could disconnect it, because we're still talking, but I think that is an interesting thing. We're not on the air, so I'm just talking.
You can keep seeing.
Yes, I could see him. Fine. No, put it on that side. It's easier. I think one of the things that I'm loving that you're saying, because I was telling Austin, there's a church that I work with, and I'm working with the pastor to open up a community center, and it has a STEAM foundation. And the reason why is because I always say exposure equals opportunity, right? Neither one of my parents graduated from college. My mom had an appointed position for the city of Lackawanna, but she made sure that her kids experienced stuff outside of the city of Buffalo. Even though my mom was a widow, since she was 36, we went on family vacations. We were never on public assistance. She saved every check my dad got because he passed away and he was a police officer. And now my mom was able to retire at 59. So I saw a totally different life of endless possibilities. And I'm like, if I could ever extend that to young people, because if you experience it one time, you know it's possible. You know it's possible. So I agree with you. I think that is a great perspective.
I don't even think that exposure. Oh.
Go ahead. Here. So
welcome
not
back.
Yet, not yet.
Oh.
Not yet. Not yet.
1 minute, he said. Yeah, so exciting. That's funny. We're gonna pause. Oh, we gotta promote that.
So we get ready to let you know about the youth forum is coming up as well.
Okay.
East High School, February
What is
27th,
that?
2025.
Welcome back to the Conversations with Jim Anderson show. We are here with Judge James McLeod. If you want to join the conversation, you can always call in at 716-837-1112. We'd love to hear from you. Before I pass the mic back to Judge McLeod, I do want to make mention to talk about there will be a youth discussion with some of the mayoral candidates. We'll get a chance to ask questions or hear the youth ask questions. And that's going to be February 27th, 2025 at 5:30 p.m. at East Community High School. Again, that's a youth discussion for some of the mayoral candidates, hearing some of the youth ask questions. And it's going to be on February 27th, 2025 at 5:30 at East Community High School. And I'm going to run to this caller before I pass the mic back to you, if that's okay. Caller, you should be on the air. Good morning.
Yes, good morning. This is Dr. Doyle calling in.
Good morning, Dr.
Oh,
Doyle.
Dr. Doyle.
Yes, I want to say hello to Judge McLeod. I haven't talked to him in a long time, but I wanted to say that Judge McLeod was always a frequent guest on my radio show. I did the show for 14 straight years on WUFO, and he would always come in, and I greatly appreciate him. He's always been very active, and he's always supported me in my programs. And Judge, I like your idea. I heard you Sunday on the radio, and you suggested that maybe the community could come together and select a candidate so we can all support. I like that idea very much. I just wanted to ask you, what do you think the chances for that is? But before I leave you, since today is President's Day, I can't leave you but without saying something. It was a black man who helped to capture the assassin of President McKinley in Buffalo in 1901. His name was James B. Parker. He stood 6 feet tall. He weighed over 250 pounds. And I would say that the black community, thousands of black, came together to pay respect to him. James B. Parker. Don't forget that name. Okay, Judge, I will hang up and listen to the rest of your program. It's so nice to greet you.
Thank you, Mrs. Doyle.
Thank you very much.
So she just hit us with some black history on the Jim Anderson show. I think we're going to have to keep that rolling out.
Oh, yeah.
Right there. Just so, Miss Doyle ran on the Freedom Party line.
Yes, I remember.
And she took a bold move doing that there for Lieutenant Governor.
Mm-hmm.
You remember that?
Yes, I do.
So,
I do.
How did you feel about that at that moment? But,
I was proud, as an awful lot of us would or should have been, for her to take that stand. It was something that wasn't expected,
mm-hmm.
but she stood up for what was right. And that's what it's all about. And that's been the legacy and history of Mrs. Doyle over the course of her lifetime. But as to her question as to whether or not it can be done, that is, the leaders coming together to make something like that happen. Number one, unfortunately, it's late.
Yes.
This is something that would or should have been done at the beginning, like they do in other cities, at the beginning of or even pre the election time. Election time, right? Yes. When they know an election's coming up, this is something that people should plan for. Mayor Brown's departure wasn't a surprise; it was just a question of when it was going to happen. So steps would or should have been taken a long time ago. As to whether or not it should be done, there's no question it can be done. There's no question it should be done. The only question is, in my mind, will it be done? It's been done before. And it can't be done again. It's ministers getting together, putting their denominations, leaving them outside the door when they go in.
The Jeremiah groups, all those groups,
all of them getting together. People are looking for leadership. Young people are looking for leadership. They say, well, you got all these old folks here. What are they doing? I mean, they're talking, but what are they doing? Not only for themselves, but for us.
So, Judge, what happened was this here, and I'll make it clear. And some of the older folks in my age range, it was a grassroots organization that were picking a lot of candidates. Then Unity came up and started picking candidates. We don't have those type of organizations people coming together and to really direct folks on how we're going to go about vetting the right person to be in that position. Some of the young folks that we deal with right now in our organization, like this youth forum that they're coming up with, some of them are student government at East High School. So now this is where we have to go, and with Austin as well, because you're a little bit older, but you're still on that threshold as them, to organize to the point that people can understand that you guys have power right now. Because we've been seeing a lot of folks getting put in position. We know nothing about them, and now all of a sudden they run in city of Buffalo, whether it's county, whether it's city. And some party lines is pushing these folks there without coming to the community. So how do we make that leverage for young folks like yourself organizing to the point of saying, yeah, we're going to go out and knock on doors, but we also have some candidates in our group as well to go from there?
Well, I think I'm going to go back to kind of what you were talking about that succession piece, right? Mm-hmm. Making sure that people are being put in place strategically in order for them to take those seats that become available. I think as a young person, I don't know if advocacy, as much as it was back in the days, as popular or as viable as an option for me to do. I would love to speak on behalf of my people, but the problem is my people don't want to pay me for it, and so I can't. So I gotta have a day job.
When you
so I'm saying that
it's not pay. It's not pay when
it's not pay, but you need money to live, right? And so the issue that a lot of people have is, like they talk about, we want to climb, but to lift is to say maybe it's not money. But if it's saying, oh, okay, I have an opportunity, I want you to speak in front of these people, it's to give them resource and availability where pursuing that avenue, fighting for their people is something that's in their interest as well. So you will get paid later down the line. I'm saying to you, brother, is this here right now. If you young folks don't come together right now and be a voice, and later on down the line, you'll get paid, because I'll give it to you plain and simple. South Dividers Coalition, we had a program going years and years ago when it was homicides in the city of Buffalo. It was almost 96 homicides in the city of Buffalo. Am I right or wrong, Judge?
Yes.
At one moment, right? And we had a system. Rocco Dino was the Buffalo commissioner. And, we formulated these groups, Stop the Violence and other groups, and we marched on City Hall. We got them out. And some of those folks right now are getting paid for their services, what they did a long time ago. But we have power. That's what I'm saying. You have to have the youth come together in order for this to work. The pay part gonna come to you.
I think, but hold on. I need to bring in a different perspective though, because this is the thing. So look at the groups that you're talking about. And so many of them had day jobs. Judge McLeod said during his lunch break, he did X. Yeah. He said, in addition to his job, he did these other things. Mm-hmm. We grew up in a time where, to the point that you're speaking of, my question is, who would be the leaders vetting the people that we're talking to? Because back in the day, we had leaders that were the church leaders, many of those church leaders had jobs. So they weren't just trying to build a church and independently try to build a brand as a pastor and make their money. But to Austin's point, young people are different right now because we have foolish belief, meaning that if somebody was a pastor of a church, I believe something about that title and I had no way to fact check them. Nowadays, if it's a person in a position and there's an error in their moral standard or value backed up on what they believe, they're not going to follow that blindly like I think we did as young people.
Right.
If it was an adult that walked into the room, we respected that because that's how we were raised. Don't ask any questions. What I had to learn to say as a professional is with my kids, I said one of the hardest things was how I grew up. I love the respect piece. But when I got my first job as an engineer, as a young 23-year-old, and I got to tell somebody older than me as my daddy who don't look like me that you need to listen to me because I have a position of authority and nobody taught me about that. Mm-hmm. Young people nowadays, that's how they walk into it.
Activist is totally different.
I understand what you're saying, but what I'm saying to someone like him is he's trying to create his profession.
I get that.
And he's looking for opportunities.
I'm not marking that what you're saying with your profession.
You're saying delay. You're saying delay. Wait. You're saying for them to advocate, but a lot of the people you're talking about had jobs.
No, I'm saying to you, no, and they didn't have jobs. I'm trying to let you know something about what it takes to be in the power of making things happen in the city of Buffalo and our community. You don't have to worry about the job part. It's about you advocating and being an activist in this community and saying what's right. And that's what Judge McLeod has been doing all his life. Regardless of what he had credential-wise, he would walk with us when we had to march on things like that there. He took the opportunity. We talked to young folks. Young folks got jobs later on down the line. But I'm saying to you right now, if you're going about trying to look for just a job, then you're in the wrong business. That's not the business of trying to be an activist in this community.
But one of the things that can be done, because clearly times have changed, there's no question about that. And unfortunately, one of the things that have changed with time is that we don't have true leaders here.
Right.
When I mean standout leaders, you have people who are important, but you don't have the standout leaders. You don't have those individuals who stood out, the Dan Ackers, the Leroy Coles, who was the head of the Urban League. You don't have, you've got ministers who have the prominence, let's say, of B.W. Smith or whatever. But one of the things that can be done, and I understand work is important, but it doesn't have to be difficult. What you have to be willing to say to yourself, okay, I've got this job. I need a job. I got this job. Can I carve out, in addition to that job, a couple of hours on a Saturday for me to get a group of our folks together? Mm-hmm. Start out with a small group or a large group, whatever, like thinking individuals. Say, let's get together, whether it's over coffee, let's meet at this place. Hey, can we meet at your church or whatever? And start to percolate these ideas. And then having those individuals reach out to folks that they know to bring in. There are a number, I've been at a couple of businesses, a number of businesses here in the city of Buffalo, who have complained, and understandably so, about the disparity in how they've been treated by the city of Buffalo and with state agencies and whatnot, as opposed to the white counterparts. And I've said to them, I remember one of these conversations took place when Arlie Daniels was alive. We were together talking about it. Saying, what you folks have got to do, you've got influence. You've got influence because folks are coming to your business. Absolutely. So they respect you. They know you. What you need to do is to use that and build upon it to get people who think like you to come into a room with you and say, hey, we're here as a group. We may not be walking the streets every day, but on Saturdays or sometimes at night, we're getting together. And when the need arises for us to be someplace to speak truth to power, or to speak for something that's right, we're going to be there. It may require, I got to take a vacation day from my job because you need that job to survive. But Saturdays are available. Nighttime is available. Sundays are available. Over the course of the years, and this is one of the things I've looked at here in Buffalo, and remember that other folks who don't look like us, one of the things they did not want was for loud Black folk to come out and start talking about things that were wrong. Absolutely. And demanding change. Absolutely. That's where you get a reaction, and things were done. Because we're complacent in too many instances. You've got folks who go along to get along. There is a need for that anymore. we have to get back to those days. And I think to some degree, if you look at the national level, one of the reasons why Trump and his folks are trying to wipe out the education department, because they don't want us to know our history. They don't want us to know how we got to where we are, how our ancestors did it, because what you're doing, you're not recreating the wheel. You just have to build on what they started to push that cart a little further on down the road. And it can't be done. It just takes somebody to say, okay, this is a good idea. I'm going to talk to so-and-so. You want to sit down with me or get with me? This is what I'm thinking. What do you think? And let's see how many other folks we can get to go along with it, because they will respect you then.
James McLeod is on here. Just step down from the mayoral race if you just come on board to the Jim Anderson show. Judge McLeod, James McLeod is here to let you know the reason why he stepped out of the race. And you can call in. We do have a caller calling in.
I think that was a great perspective. And I think it's just a difficult thing sometimes to have people come together to have these conversations because people are just trying to survive in this current economy.
Caller, you're on the air with the Jim Anderson show. Go ahead.
No caller. I do want to comment on kind of what you said, and I'm just expressing my feelings as a young person. It feels like city has become so used to what is. It doesn't feel like we want to fight for what could be. And so it feels like a lot of times on these issues, we're not reinventing the wheel. But it feels like I'm trying to pull and push my elders to believe in their city again, too. And it's like, I know I'm saying money, and I shouldn't say money because it's power. I can every go and speak on these last people who are like, what's really going on here? What is really, how we really got to this point in the city? And when I look at other people, I don't have years on the bench, and I'm like, oh no, if we can't see the value in this, it makes me fearful. It makes me fearful that the work that I'm putting in isn't going to be rewarded, not necessarily just monetarily, but through change at all. And it makes me feel as a young person that the effort that I'm undertaking might not be fully worth it. But I do want to let the caller reply, and then I can let you reply to that.
Jim Anderson show.
You got to turn your radio on.
Turn your radio down, sir.
Just
caller, you're on the air. Go ahead, caller.
Hello?
Go ahead, caller. You're on the air. Turn your radio down.
Caller, you're on the air. Go ahead, caller. Go ahead, caller. You're on the air. Turn the radio down.
I would just.
Good morning.
Go ahead, caller.
Good morning. This is Brother Sinclair. And first and foremost, I would like to congratulate Judge McLeod on making a big decision as far as stepping down. But here is the gist of it about the politics here in Buffalo. And I would like to apologize to the younger folks because, again, Judge McLeod made a very point about saying succession. We have not been able to do that for well over 15, 20 years. The last time we was in that position, we had the Cliff Bells, we had the Dave Collins, we had the Pitts and all that. We should have been grooming young folks back then for this time now. However, when we have certain groups that was mentioned by my brother Murray, whereas you had the grassroots, you had the youth coalition, whatever, entities that would just fight against each other. And instead of coming together and do exactly as Judge McLeod has said, finding out who would be the best candidate to run for mayoral as a black person. Let's just put it out there, as a black person. But the problem is we act like crabs in a barrel because we don't trust each other. Because everybody is seeking out, okay, if I represent you, what am I going to get? If I represent you on this side, what am I going to get? We're talking about the whole total east side and along with Buffalo. We all have to understand one thing too. Money talks, everything else walks. So if you want to be real about politics, let's get real about politics. And let's find out who would be the best representation for us. I'm tired of listening to shows where people don't want to talk for real.
Right.
That's a real problem for me. And the other thing I don't understand too is just like you said, okay, we all understood Mayor Brown was going to step down.
Okay, we all understood there were certain individuals who was willing to run for mayoral. Did anybody set anything up? Hey man, why don't we all get together and let's talk about who would represent the city best? No, just like you said, now we're behind the 8 ball. The Democratic Party already said who they want to represent. They didn't even come to the community. They shoved it right down our throat. So when are we going to take care of that part? So I'm going to get off the line. I'm going to keep listening. And I like what the young man is saying, and I'm going to say to the young people again, it is our fault as the older generation that we didn't prepare to put y'all in position. Otherwise, Ned, you wouldn't be in position right now when you're feeling like you're scrambling.
Thank you, Saint.
So
Thank
I'm
you,
going to get off the air right now and continue to listen.
That's St. Clair on the air talking to us. And St. Clair, thank you for the comments that you just made. We're back here. It falls back to what we get ready to have a discussion at East High School with the youth discussion with the mayoral candidates. That's February 27th, 2025 at 5 o'clock. The doors open 5:30. They'll be taking place at East Community High School. WFO will be there. They will actually be doing a live stream with it as well. And so we want to let people know about that there. And Judge, I believe you said you're still coming to that forum, basically, right?
Yes.
See, because he's still a mayoral candidate, and that's a blessing. Caller, you on the air? Go ahead, caller.
Yes, hello, sir. How are you?
Okay.
How you doing?
Okay.
You hear me?
Yes, sir.
With a continuation there, I'm an older guy here, and this feuding we have between the generations, and like you say, we don't set up for secession, but even in the same age group, we had a student group. I was out there by Syracuse University, went to a state school up there, and our people are so given to partying. I don't understand it. I mean, we ain't that far away from 1965, and yet we are given a party. And I also know these modern politicians. When I mean modern, like the last 30 years, almost 40. I've never seen black politicians so uncomfortable around their own people. You didn't see this with Mayor Jackson down in New Orleans. You didn't see this with Marion Barry and other ones. It seems like they don't even want to be around their own people.
Thank you for that, sir.
One of the things, and unfortunately, if you're a history buff, I minored in history, that the generation that we have now, and this gentleman sort of touched on it when he was talking about the years, is probably the first generation that has existed where there hasn't been struggle going on in this country for our people. And whether it was from the first boat that brought us over here struggling, through slavery, through the Reconstruction era, whether it was in the 20s, whether it was 30s, all the way up to the 50s, 60s.
To now.
Well, not as much now, but right. As it was national struggle that was going on that brought us together as a people, and each generation knew that there was a struggle and they had to fight, they had to stay together to try to make it better as we all walk down the road together.
Well, the caucus is going on in Albany right now.
Well, that's going on in Albany now, but what's happened nationally and maybe even in New York State and here in Buffalo, that folks have become complacent. There is no, folks feel like, well, I got everything when you really don't. There isn't a need for me to be struggling or striving for anything when there really is. The wool has been pulled over our eyes, and as a result, we're marching through this world without a clear direction. Not everywhere, but in certain parts of the country and in some parts of Buffalo, marching forward without a clear direction. So when you're talking about, getting young people together and how do I get them together, and that might be a difficult thing. To me, it is going to be difficult because of that reason, that struggle, that survival, because we as a people, unfortunately, will, until that great day comes, we'll be in a survival mode, at least here in Western New York. So young people have to sort of look at it again. I talked about it before, historically, looking back and seeing how and why. And you look at how and why things were done then, the why is still here now. The reason to do it is here now. It's just a question of how you get around doing it. Back when I was in college and in high school, I remember turning on TV and whether it was in the South or even Chicago and other places like that, a lot of the marches and the demonstrations and the screaming and the yelling for justice and fairness was coming out of the mouths of kids.
Yes.
They were coming out of the mouths of kids.
Without pay.
They were, because it was something that they were entitled to, as opposed to now it's I don't know. I don't know what it is, but it's that mindset isn't there. And that's what's got to be reignited. If indeed things are going to get better for you folks, you young folks, to make it better for our old folks who are going to be taken care of in a few years.
I think it was kind of when I look back in history and some of these transformational movements, there was a cohesion that you mentioned that came from struggle, right? And when the struggle goes from something in your face to something more hidden, something more a little bit beyond the scenes or behind the scenes, it gets hard to unite people. And so going back to that question that I continually ask, because whether you're talking about organizing young, middle, or elders, it's going to be the same question. And until we answer it, we're never going to be able to progress. What unites Black people more than suffering? Because if suffering is always our uniting factor, that means we're really good at playing catch up. That means we like this. And that also means that then we're resilient people. And I've told people before, I hate that word. We're resilient. We think I'm good at taking punches? You think I'm good at, I can take a punch and keep moving? I don't want to be just a resilient people. And I think until we can figure out, especially in today's day, where we become so fragmented, there's so many identity things people want to grab. Oh, no, I'm an athlete. Oh, no, I'm a rapper. We don't even know. You can't just say what a Black person is nowadays. And so I think the question we have to ask ourselves is what unites Black people more than suffering? Because for today and for the future, when suffering no longer becomes something that becomes our main driving force, which is our goal, what then keeps us together? And we see what happens in modern times when that fragments and we kind of disintegrate. So I think that point of what unites Black people more than suffering, until I can walk down the street and hear any answer, I'm not even saying a common answer, any answer, we're going to be here. That's how I feel. And so I want my people to start to say, you know what, I have my answer, and I don't want to take the last of our minutes talking about it because I really do want to give you a chance, even though you have withdrawn. People still may want to contact you, still be in touch. I want to give you a chance for that. I want to reiterate this date and time, but is there a response you maybe have to that? What unites Black people more than suffering?
Well, I don't know if this is sort of a suffering too. Here in Buffalo, what is it that would or should unite us as a people? And I've told this to people before, and I will continue to say it. In too many neighborhoods, all you've got to do is walk out the door, stand on the sidewalk, look to your left, look to your right, look in front of you, and look behind you, and see what we don't have. What isn't there? And then you go on the other side of Main Street, and you look at what's there. And the question you ask is, why not? It should be no different. That difference which divides us between communities should not be there. And that should be one of the reasons why folks should get together, unite to say, we've got to do something. This can't continue to be. And again, with young people, I think sort of like when I was on Murray's show up at WUFO, where I was talking about Jefferson Avenue when I first came into Buffalo, and William Street, Broadway, and all these other. And this one of these young kids says, "Yeah, my grandfather told me about those things. He's never seen them, right. But he walk out and say, tell me a neighborhood where there aren't any houses."
We're getting ready. We're short on time. Thank you for coming on to the Jim Anderson Show, and we look forward to seeing you at the forum at East High School. Folks, this is the Jim Anderson Show. God bless.